The Zenless space is really weird. At one point, I wanted to say that this is like all of the gacha space. I really wanted to say this is like every single gacha game that has some form of like in-game action RPG, whatever. But the more I looked into it, that's not what it is. I think the Zenless category in general is in such a weird position because we just got through explaining stuff for Rival. So if you guys are already in stream, you kind of know what it is that I'm gonna say. But for the sake of the video, I'm gonna try and explain this with like 3 different examples, maybe 2. Okay, but it's difficult for me to explain the example in a simple to understand manner because you have to experience it. Just forewarning, I'm trying to explain something to you that you either have already gone through or you will never go through because you don't play the game, and it's really hard to do that. Okay, in Zenless right now there are tiers to the meta discussion, if you will. Okay, and so like how I'll explain that is like there's tier 1, which is I can't clear. I'm struggling to get my 20k. I can't crack 25k in Shiyu defense. I can't do Annihilation Simulacrum hard. I don't understand the combat. I don't understand the bosses, the mechanics. This is like tier 1. Okay, you are what we would consider the majority of the player base, right? You need to do whatever it is. Use a color bar analogy. I wish I don't have it. Open up fucking MS Paint, bro. Today class, we're gonna be doing a little bit of MS Painting. So let's try and expand this a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see everything and we're all cool. Now I'm not an MS Paint master. I don't know what I'm doing here. So we're gonna try and do this in like a categoric sense, but I need this to be, maybe not. Maybe we can get away with it being horizontal.
Are you tired of losing? Are you tired of losing those 50-50s to bullshit? Well, don't worry, big dog, I got just the deal. Let me show you a popular website that helps gamers buy more for less. Not only can you score games for less, but they've also gotten a partnered top-up services, meaning you can buy your pulls cheaper too.
Oh, that's nice.
On top of that, Aniba offers something else I haven't seen any other site do, a 10% cash back with each purchase. Now I get cheaper pulls and my money back. But wait, there's more. Using my link in the description box will get you all set up to start saving more money today. Now get out there and go pull that new character.
We're gonna drag that out. Boom, there we go. Awesome, I did it, Chad, I did it. This is tier 1. I'm not gonna get like super fancy. We just need to understand some shit, okay? What is tier 1? Tier 1 is the majority player base of players that don't understand how to play the game. This isn't directly your fault. I'm not blaming anyone for being in tier 1. I'm just saying that tier 1 is where the majority of the player base sits when it comes to Zenless Zone Zero. You can move out of tier 1, okay? Like this isn't a really big thing. Tier 1 means that you are in that position where your focus is getting the 20k, getting the in-game clear. Also, this is not for players who are not at in-game. If you are a random player who dropped the game and then you came back, and then like you're talking about what you can, this isn't for you. You are not playing in-game. You need to be actively here to be a part of this conversation, okay? Tier 1 is where we get the surgery, okay? So like, hey, I need account surgery. This is tier 1. Hey, I can't clear. I have all the characters in the game, but I don't understand how to play Anomaly. I need this. Boom. Now that we're talking about Zenless, even if it doesn't factor that much, I think it does. Do you think the individual moveset of each character and how you combine them to do team combos and how consistent the damage is in the least amount of time possible? There's no question there. Let's pause that for a little bit because you should have asked the question there and then said the because not only do the teams because of the passives or classes, but because how many becauses do we have, bro? Do you sound like the AI, right? You guys know the AI. I'm having a stroke, cuh. I can't do that, cuh. Like, you guys, those shits crack me up. They're bad. They're horrible for the community, but they're so dumb. Those AI videos are so fucking dumb. All right, so let me try and remove a lot of the becauses though. Like that way I can understand it. Are you trying to ask me, do I think that it's a factor for each character and their individual movesets and how you combine them to make team combos? Do I think that that's a factor in your ability as a player to get damage on the board, right? Like how good you are at creating or using your combos as a team, the rotations is what allows you to get good damage. Is that what you're asking me? If that's what you're asking me, I do think that's a factor. But like that's kind of what we're going to talk about here once we get into like the next tier, like tier 3 or 4, something like that. But going back to what I said, just to reiterate so we get back on topic, tier 1, general player base. You do not understand the game enough to participate in conversations about the meta. That's a very simple way that I can say this, okay? That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the game or that you don't enjoy the game. It doesn't mean that you can't learn more about the game or that you aren't learning more about the game. Then after that, we have tier 2. Tier 2 is, where are we gonna be? Tier 2 is probably something like this. I don't know a percentage. I'm just kind of making some shit up here, I guess. We're gonna label this blue. Tier 2 is like the slightly above category. You understand things about the game that will allow you to understand some aspects of the meta conversation. You understand the basics as like why a support character would be as strong as they are, or why a DPS character would be as strong as they are. You understand things like damage percent versus attack percent versus pin value, right? You're understanding more about your substats and things like that. What you don't understand is like tech. You don't understand the tech, the rotations. You can't route things. Like you haven't crossed that barrier yet, okay? You can participate, you can listen, you can give an opinion. It may or may not be correct. You can listen to the conversations, but what you say is not as valued as the next 2 tiers. Again, this isn't to demean anybody. This is just to explain what these tiers represent. And I'll get to it. There's a reason why I'm explaining these tiers. Okay, so next would be, again, let's go through the woes of MS Paint, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Tier 3. This is the tier that EO resides in. I jump between tier 3 and tier 4, depending on the character. Tier 3, you understand 98% of the game. You understand 98% of the game. Everything about the game from a base level all the way up to what would be considered like the top 1% or less than 1%. You can't execute it, okay? So tier 3 is that you understand the meta. You're able to dissect certain things about the meta, why things perform the way they do. You understand why a team would be valued or not valued, why it's strong, why it's not strong. You understand matchups and the understanding of matchups. All of the things that you see me and other creators making videos on, you understand that to an absurd degree. You're able to participate in discussions about meta or arguments about meta, and you can validate or argue your point. You can then go on to prove your point in the event that you need it to prove your point, like in game. This is tier 3. The final tier, which, can I just color it? Just lets me color it. Awesome. I'm just gonna put a 4. There's no way we're fitting this in here, bro. T4. Boom. So anyway, tier 4 is literally your top like 0.5, 0.10, 0.1, whatever it is. When you look at the scoreboard in Zenless Zone Zero, when you see Deadly Assault scores, when you see Annihilation Simulacrum scores, when you see Shiyu defense 150k across the board, right? Or like they're able to achieve the 50ks consistently. I won't say 150k because some of those do require Eidolons, right? You are in that top 0.01%, right? That is tier 4. The game is nothing to you. It's no longer a matter of learning the game. It's a matter of learning whatever this new thing is that just came out, so a new character or a new team, and how to optimize it. You no longer have to think about what the best build is. You're not looking for the best stats. Your only concern is what's the matchup, how to optimize it, and then execute it. That's it. And you're very adept at doing it. Now, mind you, and this is something that we do have to admit, when people optimize these runs, when you see someone get like a 65k run or like a 50k clear, whatever, and like they're using like a low cost or something that you're like, oh, that's not even the best matchup into that team. Like, that's crazy. How'd you do that? This is running them anywhere between 50 to over 100 hours of grinding and practice and figuring this shit out. This is something you can't math it. It's one of the best things I love about tier 4. Like any type of tier 4 gameplay or reviews, best thing I love about it, you cannot math it. You can't take it into the fucking calculator. You can't take it in Google Sheets and say that this combination of things will give me this result. This is the best to get me this result. If the best build has pin 5, I can run pin 5 because it's the best and I'm gonna get a 65k. Nope. Get your ass in the fucking lab and test it out. Tier 4 is all about that. You don't have a lot of tier 4s. You don't. Now that we've explained the difference in the tiers, I'm getting into the actual point of like why I'm bringing this up and why I said that meta discussions are weird. Keep in mind the tiers, okay, guys? Like how small the blocks are compared to everything, right? Now, once we get into, despite your feelings towards Pridewind, this isn't a Pridewind review. This concept applies to every tier list across the board. Any tier list that you would have seen throughout the entirety of Zenless Zone Zero, especially within season 3, late season 2, like midway season 2, all the way up to season 3 current. Any tier list that you would have seen, this applies to it. The reason why we can't accurately make tier lists is because of this. And so in the defense or offense, I don't know which term I'm using here, the design of Pridewin is making a tier list for tier 1 players with information from tier 3 and tier 4. And so if you remember what I said, right? Tier 1, you cannot participate in meta discussions. You don't understand enough about the game. So when you have a website creating a tier list for players who don't understand enough about the game, it creates conflict. So when it comes to meta discussions, now we get into why are meta discussions different per tier. A tier 4 conversation, everything that doesn't need to be addressed doesn't get talked about. Oh, well, what about this build? What about when this happens? What about this basic thing? Doesn't need to be addressed. It's already a silent or quiet understanding. So they continue to talk about whatever it is beyond that. An example of this would be like talking about a particular combo. So if we're talking about something in the case of Bonway, right? Let's go with Bonway because he's considered difficult to play, right? In the context of Bonway and talking about where Bonway places in the meta, we're not going to bring up, well, you know, Bonway is the most technical character to play because of his combo system, and the combo execution required to play that character is pretty difficult for the majority of players. So I feel like he shouldn't be in tier 0.5 because the majority of players cannot input those combos consistently. We're not talking about that. That does not come up in a tier 4 conversation because it's irrelevant. The tier 4 player is going to figure it the fuck out, right? They're going to do it. It doesn't matter. Bringing up bullshit that doesn't matter, whether or not the player can execute this thing, it doesn't matter in a tier 4 conversation. Unless it's a 1%, it's like a 1 out of 10 chance you can execute this. It doesn't get brought up because it's not an anomaly. Tier 3 conversations would include whether or not somebody can execute something. But then it gets thrown in the dust. It doesn't matter anymore, right? It doesn't, like a tier 3 conversation is something that I do with you guys. I'll bring up somebody having high execution, but then I'll go on to explain to you why it doesn't matter. Because in the context of meta, if we're talking about meta, what the meta doesn't take into account is whether or not the player can execute. That's not a factor. If we're talking about like a matchup in a fighting game, whether or not I can box Sagat, right? If I'm playing Ryu versus Sagat, it doesn't matter if it's hard to do the combo that's gonna one-tap Sagat. That doesn't exist, but you know what I'm saying, right? A corner to corner, that doesn't matter. What matters is it possible? Is it consistent enough that if you learned it, you could repeat it over and over and over? That is the type of conversation happening in tier 3 when it comes to execution or what's feasible for a player, right? Tier 3, we're talking about, we're getting to the road of optimization. A tier 3 conversation, we don't need to know what the best gear set is or whatever for the character. We're talking about what's the best gear for this matchup. If I'm using Arya with Valina, am I gonna stick to using 4-piece Phaethon's Melody with ether damage or pin 5? Or is there a particular situation or scenario or matchup where me switching to 4-piece Shining Arya with ether 5 or attack 5 with this particular build on the rest of my units, would this give me what I'm looking for? Would this help me perform better? Better? Wow. Yeah. Tier 3 conversation is going to include a lot of the conversations about Valina. I think after experiencing a lot more with Valina, a character that's very simple on paper, I think Valina is a tier 3 character, not like the actual like tier 0, tier 1 conversation wise, because the amount of optimization you need to understand for Valina to excel the way that we put her up there, like in that caliber, you need to understand things that the average player does not even think about. One of the key things, everyone's guide about Valina mentioned this, the days value. Being able to stun, right? So like Gerda Blue is her best matchup right now. You don't need it. If you want certain scores, you need this. Stunning before Gerda Blue does its corrosive phase, before it activates its corrosion, you need to stun it. And there's certain routes that you do with Valina, depending on what you have on the team, right? The DPS and the support, that allow you to get that stun beforehand, and everyone does not have the same combos and rotations and setups to get that stun. They're all different. Arya and Valina is different. Promi and Valina is different. Miyabi and Valina is different. Piper and Valina is different. Jane and Piper are different than with Valina, right? Yanagi is different. Grace is everyone has a different route that they go about to get to the same result. This is a tier 3 conversation. And so now that we're talking about that, right? We brought that up. We've explained that. A tier 3 conversation. Again, if I'm talking about things from a tier 3 perspective, this tier list, not like the whole tier list, right? I'm saying in general, the tier list is wrong because we're not on the same page. The amount of information and understanding that I would have about the game within a tier 3 category, I can't discuss it in a tier 1 context. And this is part of the biggest reason that I say the Zenless meta is weird. Like, meta discussions about Zenless are weird because it's never only tier 4 people having a conversation, and it's not tier 3 or tier 4 people. You can't explain meta to tier 1. They don't understand enough. So like, bare minimum, you have to be tier 2. In order for you to have this meta discussion and start understanding things, you have to be tier 2. The problem with getting to tier 2, right? Again, majority of the player base is in tier 1. They are comfortable here. We were just talking about this earlier with Marvel Rivals, and like the whole 90% of the player base is playing the casual game. They think they're good at the game. They think they know something, and they value their own opinion more than whatever the tier 1. They will parrot a lot, right? You guys hear me use that term quite often. I've been using that for over 2 years. In the tier 1, some tier 2 as well, they parrot. Insert my favorite creator said this. Insert my favorite player said this. Insert my best friend who's better than me, so they're automatically the best at the game, said this. This is what they do. They parrot information, and they parrot it because it comes from a trusted source to them, but they don't actually know the reason why. Mono Ice would be a really good example for a lot of different things. To this day, Mono Ice is, per my own definition of what a team is, Mono Ice is still arguably top 5. I would really have to go through and look at like which team takes that spot. But to this day, arguably, Mono Ice is still a top 5 team. What stops Mono Ice is the game. So when we talk about this from like, if I'm talking about a top 5 team, Mono Ice is arguably like top 3. It is the perfect team in the game. It beats everything pre-freeze in the game, right? Until they started cucking Mono or Ice specifically, like freeze, it beat everything. It was the perfect team. It did everything it needed to do. It abused everyone on the team. Everyone got to show off their mechanics. It didn't matter if you played Lycon. It didn't matter if you played Yuzuha. It didn't matter if you put somebody else in the middle. I mean, it does change it because obviously you still need some form of like the freeze or whatever, and like Sokaku's not enough without Yuzuha, but that's not the point. The point being is that it's perfect across the board. It doesn't have a flaw. Mono Ice has no flaws. It is quite literally one of, if not the best team in Zenless Zone Zero. That is why the developers have hard cucked it. They have done everything they can in the last year to stop any form of Mono Ice from being strong ever again. The only thing you can use Mono Ice against, and it remains strong to this day, are old bosses that were already getting smoked by Mono Ice. When we have a discussion about Mono Ice and why Mono Ice is good, bad, whatever the you can't have that discussion with somebody in tier 1. You can't have that discussion with somebody in tier 2 because they don't understand enough. Another thing, going back to the parroting, when we parrot, you guys are hearing me say this right now, Mono Ice is whatever, and someone's gonna take that and then they're gonna parrot it for their own argument. Whatever they're arguing about, they're gonna parrot the information that I'm saying, but you can't play Mono Ice, and you don't even have to play Mono Ice to the utmost degree. That's tier 4 territory, right? You don't have to do that, but you need to be able to play it at a tier 3 category. That's why I said earlier, I dabble between tier 3, tier 4, depending on what it is. It's a CNC team, I'm in tier 4. I did a lot of work with that team, okay? Arya, I'm like right there in the cusp of tier 4, all right? I do the work for it because I really like those teams. Mono Ice, high execution. I'm in the middle of tier 3 with that team. I could put in the work to get to tier 4. Do I want to put in the work? Probably not. I'm lazy, so I don't do it. But because I've already done the work of a tier 4 Mono Ice like run through and play and practicing that for 3 weeks, I understand the premise of the team. I understand what I'm supposed to do with the team, and then I go on to try and execute it. I can participate in Mono Ice conversations. Someone else who has the same experience or understanding can participate in Mono Ice conversations. You've already done it. This is another reason why, going back to the tier list, when we were talking about Sacia, you guys know that I went on a whole whole 2-month spiel about Cecilia being one of the most cracked characters that is severely slept on in Zenless Zone Zero. And if you're looking for an accurate representation of what I'm talking about, Yexun Wang is the strongest attack DPS in the game. Cecilia is the second strongest attack DPS in the game. If Yexun Wang did not exist, Cecilia would be the strongest attack DPS in the game. And it's not close. The character that came out that's supposed to be a sub DPS is outperforming every other attack DPS in the game. Oh, but she's glued to Cecilia. You don't play the character. That's not true. Oh, well, it's only with Hyperkick. You don't play the character. That's not true. The amount of benefit she brings to the team alone by herself is above most, if not all, attack DPS. She provides more value to a team than Yexun Wang does. The only reason Yexun Wang is where she is because they designed her to be that way. That's it. They purposely made her to outperform everyone else because they needed to sell that character. So getting to tier 3 requires a player to have all agents, since else they don't have the experience to have a valid opinion. That is not what I said. Getting to tier 3 requires you to have the understanding and experience of all, if not most, agents. You don't have to own them, but you need to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And you need to be able to have that experience to speak on it for yourself. Again, let's use matchup knowledge. I love matchup discussions, right? I like analyzing a lot of things. I would consider myself a stronger analyst than player across the board in Zenless, in Rivals, in fighting games, whatever, right? I'm able, and I don't know where I got it from, I just have it. I'm very much able to dissect why or how something is happening before I can execute it. And that's just because I don't have the strongest execution, right? There are other players who have incredible execution, but they can't dissect something as fast. If you combine the two, they create one of the nastiest teams in relation to fighting games or shooters or whatever. I'm able to look at why something is happening, a match or run, whatever, and then dissect it. I'll sit there and I'll study it. Then I'll go do it. But that's because I'm able to do that. Not everybody is able to do that. Hollow Zero is everyone's in Hollow Zero. Everyone is also in Annihilation Simulacrum. And correct me if I'm wrong, what's Simulacrum or Simulation Threshold? Is that the other one? All the characters are in there for a trial too, if I'm not mistaken as well, the easy mode, right? So it's not that you don't have access to characters or like the combination of teams. It's just a matter of not having what you want out of that. Even if you don't have their best engine, you don't need it. You don't need the engine. You could play these characters with no engine. The engine doesn't matter. The engine isn't what dictates how that character's kit performs or plays. The engine is just a power thing. It's just extra. You should be, all tests for characters should be done with no engine. I swear to Bojangles. When people talk about characters, take the fucking engine off. Like, make a blank engine that just has the attack stat. That's it. The reason I say that is because look at the difference between Miyabi with her engine versus no engine. Look at the difference between Jane with her engine and how much harder or more difficult she is to play to keep her engine buff up versus Jane with Weeping Gemini, which is piss easy to keep up, or Jane with Alice's engine, which is also piss easy. It's automatically activated. You enter the field and it's permanent. That's how easy it is. So like, these engines don't matter to the degree that we're putting on them. And again, mind you, this isn't like having a discussion about meta doesn't automatically equal power. And I think that's another, right? Going back to that's a tier 2 thought process. When you only think of the power that is being provided, that is a tier 2 thought process. And that's not to say that power doesn't, fall into a discussion or whatever within tier 3 or tier 4. But when you only think of that, your immediate thought is power. Your immediate thought is, oh, well, how strong is this? That's the wrong thought process. You shouldn't think that way. What does this thing provide? What value does it provide? That's what you should be thinking about, because power is included in the value. You should be thinking about the value that it provides. And that's really all it is. The issue with the meta discussions overall, right, is that we're separated by these tiers, by these categories, and trying to explain this to any other tier that's not within the respective information gap is really difficult. The reason that we have, like, again, taking the concept of tier 0, if you're reading a tier list, and this is primarily within the gacha space, I don't see this happening in Rivals for as much as I've been like looking at the Rivals tier list, and I don't see this happen with fighting games for obvious reasons. In the gacha space, people look at tier list as tier 0 is the baseline, and then you go down from there. This has to be the most ass backwards way of thinking about a tier list. you are wrong. If you think that tier 0 is the baseline, you are stupid. I'm using that very deliberately. You are ignorant. You are dumb. You don't understand how these things work. The fact that I use we there in quotations, not me. The fact that we've pushed this as a community, some agenda, even Pridewind represents this by not doing the thing that I'm going to address later. Using tier 0 as the baseline and then representing, oh, they're tier 0, so they're great. Pull. No, you're dumb. Don't do that. Oh, but tier point. No, you're dumb. No, stop. Your baseline is tier 1. Everything in tier 1 is what you should be looking at as the floor of power. This is your power floor. That means that all, as it says, right? And again, this part is important. Meta characters. All of these characters are capable of clearing. Now, where it gets confusing, off meta characters. That's not what this term means. If Pridewind changes this to anything else, if they change this to characters that can't clear or characters that are fucking niche, I think at one point this was niche characters. I do believe at one point that the term was niche characters. If they change this to anything else, it'll immediately make more sense. Nekomata is not off meta. She's nowhere near the meta. Corrin is not off meta. She's nowhere near the meta. Base Billy is not off meta. Ben is not off meta. These characters are below the meta. They're dog shit. They are not performing anywhere close to the power floor. They're just not. Now, Caesar being down here, Caesar is off meta. Colada is off meta. Rena is off meta. Pokra is off meta. Seth is off meta. These characters are off meta because they can still get the job done. They can clear. Would you use them over the other available options? No, only if I had to. That is why they're off meta. Your baseline is tier 1 and tier 1.5. That is what people should be looking at when it comes to tier lists. Instead, people only look at tier 0 and tier 0.5. That's all that matters in the game. You are stupid. That's not how these work at all. Even continuing that point, too many fucking characters are in tier 0 across all of the gacha games. All the gacha games on Pridewind tier list and other people's tier lists. Some people just assume tier 0 means, I don't know, the best in that moment, I guess, whatever. No. Like, tier 0 is quite literally, I would say, instead of Apex characters, this represents broken or meta defining. Tier 0 needs to represent characters that are so broken, cough, cough, Ye Shun Wang, they just don't care. They will clear. They will perform to the utmost degree. You can close your eyes, jack off, and die, and they will still perform well. That is a tier 0 character. A meta-defining character. No one shuts up about the character. Everyone says you need the character. Nangong Yu, Yuzuha, Dylin / Norma. I'm still indifferent about Norma. Not that she's not great. I think Norma's amazing. I don't know if she's meta-defining. I'm having a very hard time putting Norma on the same level as Dylin. I think personally, Dylin is the only tier 0 stunner. Oh, and then Nangong Yu, of course. And then Norma goes into 0.5. I think Norma's definitely worthy of 0.5. Maybe we'll do some tier list stuff later on and we'll talk about that, but that's my point. Arya, as much as I love Arya is not in tier 0. As much as I love Promia, and I told you guys this, I said they were gonna bring her up to tier 0 simply because of like how they base things. Promia is not a tier 0 character. I would rescind what I recently said about 3 patches ago before Wind got here. I was under the firm impression, firm believer, Miyabi was going to be deserving of tier 0.5. And to some degree, she is. But now we are now having a conversation in tier 3, tier 4 category. Because now we need to talk about why Miyabi, who is supposed to be countered yet again by a whole new element and mechanic, is still beating the game. The counter to Miyabi, she's still cracking 50k. The character she's not supposed to work with, she's still cracking 50k. The fact that Miyabi now has a brand new build that people are running that is giving them 40k plus, you can't stop her. You cannot. Miyabi is arguably the best fucking character in the game because you can't stop her. They've tried for 2 years now, or a year and a half, whatever it's been, and they can't stop her. Like, when are we gonna admit that? You know what I mean? And at one point we did admit it, but I'm just saying, like, I have to rescind that. I really did think she was gonna be tier 0.5 Andy, but she putting up the same numbers as Promia. Like Arya is outperforming Miyabi, but I think that's just because Arya has stronger numbers. Like, and she doesn't care, right? Promia was better than Miyabi. I said that as well. Valina gets here, and then Promia is not even Valina's best DPS. Pre-Remiel. Promia is boxing Miyabi for the same score. Now, obviously, given certain conditions, your Promia should be able to like crack higher, but we should not be so close in score that the character being countered is creeping up on you day by day, week by week, reset by reset. Regardless of that fact, guys, I'm gonna turn this video off here. I just wanted to like finalize this part when it comes to all the tier stuff. And if anyone has any questions, by all means, feel free to ask. Once again, to like further stamp this into the time of time, this isn't to separate players so that someone can say like, hey, you suck, or like skill issue or whatever. I've said this 100 times over. One of, if not the biggest factor that holds players back in Zenless is the knowledge gap. It's not a skill gap. I mean, skill is a factor, yes, but the biggest factor is the knowledge gap. The tier 1 players, most of them are in tier 1 for one of two reasons. They don't care, totally valid. They don't know, and they don't know where to learn this information. The moment they start learning this information, they quickly move into tier 2. And depending on what they want, they go into tier 3 and eventually tier 4, right? That's how that works. You can't have a conversation about meta with the majority player base because they fall under the category of they don't know enough or they don't care enough. So you omit them. But since we are a community, again, using quotation marks here, we try and represent them. We try and include them in like these factors. And I think that is one of the biggest hindrances that we have for talking about meta when it comes to Zenless. On top of the fact, let me add this little bit in here too, because I didn't even mention this at all. Zenless is not like the other games. There's an amazing video, and I don't agree with all of the points for both Wuthering and Zenless, but there's a great video going around. This video right here. What's the difference between Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero anyway? It's very well constructed. Like I said, I don't agree with all points, but they're so well constructed that I understand why he came to these conclusions and why he feels the way that he does. I don't have to argue with the points, right? Because again, there's a separation of tier here. Where this guy is coming from is somewhere between tier 2, tier 3. There are things that he mentioned in the video that if you are within like this, again, this tier 3, tier 4 category, you understand that what he said is incorrect. And again, it's not something to argue for. Like, I don't have to argue about it. It's just, it's not fully true. One of the things that I do remember him talking about, I won't go into full context on it, but it's important for why I'm talking about it now. He mentioned that Wuthering was more of a, I think he said it was single player rotations, something that he says early on. He describes different game types. He says that Wuthering is like a Soulsborne, right? Where it's player focused, it's player based, thank you. And then Zenless is enemy based. And to explain what that means, in case you guys haven't seen that video, player based means exactly what you think from Genshin or Wuthering. It is about me, the player, and my team. What can I do to clear as fast as possible? I don't care about what the boss does. I don't care about the enemy behavior. I don't care about its movements, its patterns, its tricks, nothing. I know my rotation and I know how to execute it, and then I'm gonna do it. Boom, that's it. And he describes Wuthering as that. You guys know that I've said that for a handful of years when it comes to Wuthering, and like that's why I don't like the combat for Wuthering. Now, with some of the newer characters and with their season 3 or 3.0 has been changing my opinion on that. I think they have started making more interactive bosses, and I think that's a great thing. Moving into Zenless, he mentioned that Zenless was enemy based and that the rotations didn't matter as much. This is 100% not true. But with the rotation part, not the enemy based part, he's correct that Zenless is more enemy based. Zenless being more enemy based means that you need to understand not just your character, your team, your weapon. You also need to understand what this enemy can and can't do against you. This goes into, if you guys remember, let me see if I can find it here from my article. If you guys saw my Vesper guide, I'm gonna make some more of these at some point. I just really enjoy doing it. But this is the Vesper guide that I did, okay? I broke down everything for you. If you ever have an issue with Vesper as a boss, everything you need to know to be able to clear and beat this boss consistently and confidently, comfortably is in this guide. There's also a video version. I think the written guide is better because you can always come back to it. You don't have to scroll through timestamps. That being said, I've written out the strategy on how to beat Vesper, what it does, what it doesn't do, what you can do, what you can't do, different numbers and whatever else for the people that want the math. I go on to break down what each move does and how you can stop the move, why the move is important, why you can ignore the move, why you can skip the move, which moves you don't want to skip, blah, 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 blah. This is why Zenless is enemy based. the final thing that I'm bringing up and talking about, like whatever's going on here in relation to the tiers, as well as to that video and tier list as a whole, right? The tier 4 category, remember when I said that they only care about like optimization, like that's where their conversation lies, like the optimization, right? There's a huge difference between where the tier 4 player sees the game. The tier 4 player sees the game as like, how do I optimize this for the kill? I want my 65K. So they do things that a tier 3, 2, and 1 player will not do, should not do, and cannot do. EO, what does that mean? Elaborate. If you look at kill runs and you watch kill runs, you study the kill run, you try and imitate a kill run, there are certain things that happen that otherwise would not happen in a normal fight with that boss. I'll use Priest with Ishwin or whatever other thing you want to do, right? But primarily Ishwin. When you're fighting Priest for a kill, there are certain things you need or want Priest to do. If it doesn't do them, you start over. If it does do them, but it does it out of order, you start over. In a normal fight, if I only care about 3 moves for my kill run, I'm obviously like hyper exaggerating here. If I only care about 3 specific moves for the kill run, but the boss has 15 different moves, 12 of those things I don't care about. I don't care about the attack variations of the other 12 moves. I don't care about how to counter the other 12 moves. I don't care about what the other 12 moves do. I don't care about the benefits I get from doing or interacting with the other 12 moves, right? I don't care. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about being strong enough. Anyway, that is my point, is that there's tier 4, there are things that they completely ignore because their goal is to get this kill. Tier 3 is where you want to learn. Tier 3, if the boss has 15 moves, before I can even register that only 3 of them matter, I need to learn all 15, why they work, how they work, what they do, what benefit do I get from that. One of the reasons that I still, to this day, people don't like Vesper, because I first of all, I hate these terms personally. I think these terms are just fucking stupid to say, but it's the internet, so everyone just copies whatever. I don't like the whole like blank slop, rotation slop, parry slop. Everyone calls Vesper parry slop. I hate that term. Why do I hate that term specifically when it comes to Vesper? Because you don't have to interact with all the parries. Oh, they just want you to parry everything. You know you don't have to press the button, right? And again, this goes into like tier 4, tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 stuff, right? Control skill slop, right? You don't have to engage with the shit at all. Control skills you do have to engage with, right? Because like obviously you want the points, cool, whatever. You don't have to parry this bitch. There's a, where is it at? The stinger. Let me see if I can find the stinger thingy that here we go. This move here. So the whole thing with this move, right? People call this the whole thing like parry slop because like, oh, she does a thing and you see all the flashes, you have to parry all the flashes. No, the fuck you don't. And on top of that, you can quite literally beat the shit out of her while she's doing the stinger, the dashes. And then what do you care about? You only care about the final thing to parry so that you get the days value from it. And you get the, let me see if it'll pop up here. You get a small impair. It's like a mini shutdown. I go on to explain that in the guide. Boom, impair. And she's paused for like 2 to 3 seconds for you to do whatever it is that you need to do, right? And then that's where your rotations and your teams and who you can and can't use, all that stuff comes into play. So when you have a character that's, again, a reason that I like Vesper is that she fights back. Vesper is not she's not a punching bag. Her entire kit as a boss is designed to fight you. Her whole thing is being able to fight back. She has moves that can avoid your moves. She has the marionette, the puppet, so that she can, you know, like simultaneously beat the shit out of you. Or otherwise, as I stated, frame traps, because that's what it is. She has moves where if you don't interact with them, she gets the advantage. That's a whole different thing, by the way. Some of these bosses, which I don't have every single boss in the game to talk about. I know that there was some with Annihilation Simulacrum, in particular with Minato, but I don't think I haven't written down everything to do it. But Minato has some moves, Hugo has them too, and both versions of Billy have it. They have these moves where if you don't do the thing, they get the advantage. The thing could be anything. If you don't parry, if you don't dodge, if you parry instead of dodge, if you dodge instead of parry, if you attack them and they get the parry off, right? Literally has a fucking parry. He just, and all you're gonna hear, cling, 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 you lose. Hey brother, it's my turn. I'm about to beat the shit out of you. You wasted your ult, you wasted your stun. You thought you were gonna stun me because it said 99? Cling, 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 it's my turn. There are enemies in the game, when you actually take the time to learn what these enemies do, they have the advantage. What is advantage? This is, again, fighting game terminology. I mean, it's not exclusive to fighting games, but I'm more familiar with it, blah, 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 blah. The advantage, if I punch you and you block, naturally, you would have the advantage, right? That's what you would think. Okay, I blocked, now it's my turn. We always talk about turns in a fighting game, right? I block, it's my turn. I get to press buttons now, okay? But there are some moves where You punch and I block, it's my turn, right? Or vice versa. If I punch and you block, it's still my turn. There are some things that you can do, okay? Little shit that just happens the way that it does. Zenless has that, and it's things that we don't talk about them as guide makers. We don't talk about them as like, hey, here's what you need to do for the 65k kill run. Here's what you need to do to fight. We don't talk about it. That's why I made the Vesper guide, so that more people understood. Like, there's a lot of fucking shit in the game that could be used to your advantage. Once again, breaking down tier 4 through 1 or tier 1 through 4. A tier 4 player does not care about this stuff. They don't have to. They're so skilled beyond the majority of the player base that they can just skip. They neutral skip, okay? They skip over all the important shit you need to know as a regular player. Tier 4 skips it. I don't care about it. Tier 3, I can skip it if I learn it. If someone teaches it to me, I can skip it. I can easily learn everything about this boss and beat it on my own. I don't need anyone to teach me how to beat it. That's tier 3. Tier 2, hey bro, I can't beat this boss. Something not right. I need a new character. Yo man, my Miyabi, I know it's ice weak, but my Miyabi, she just not cutting it, bro. I can't crack 17k with my Miyabi. I got the premium Miyabi team, bro, but I can't crack 17k. I gotta pull Pro Mia. Wow, I pulled Pro Mia and I got 23k easy. Pro Mia better than Miyabi. That's your tier 2. Tier 1, I beat it. I'ma just mash. I see yellow, I'ma click parry. I see red, I'ma click parry. Something's gonna happen, whatever, fuck it. Oh, I lost, game's trash. Woo-wah better, HSR better, Genshin better, dead game. That's your tier 1. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that long ass rant of a video. It's been a lot. It's been a long time since I streamed, but I really want this information to be out there in the ethos for the Zenless space. Again, not to down anyone, not to degrade any player. I don't want any of you guys to use this information to degrade players either. This is genuinely, purely just for teaching purposes, because the more people that understand like how the game works and the different categories, the easier it will be for you to actually play the game and get what you want from it. You can't do what a tier 4 can do because you aren't there yet. You can't do what a tier 3 can do because you don't understand the game enough yet. But if you took the time to learn things, you could do it. And like, yeah, playing for fun is totally fine, right, Shadow? I know you didn't say that in like a opposite manner or anything like that, or opposing manner, but I'm just saying in general, when you're playing for fun, that's totally fine. I think you would have more fun not getting beat up. You know what I mean? Like if you and I were like playing some fucking like, yeah, let's play some Street Fighter, bet. And we turn on Street Fighter and I put you in a corner and you can't get out the corner. Are you gonna have fun just being in the corner, like getting blocked, knocked on your ass, blocked, knocked on your KO? You're not gonna have fun, right? But if you learned, hey man, I don't really gotta be in the corner, huh? I can get out of the corner. Oh shit, I can fight back? I can fight back? Wait a minute. The game becomes a completely different experience. It's so much more fun when you understand why and how you can fight back. That's my whole point. Nobody likes losing except losers, and you gotta call them losers. Anyway, that's it. Thank y'all for watching today's video. I appreciate you. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Smell you later.